Joining us now to discuss is Democratic Congressman Adriano Espaillat. He's the chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the first formerly undocumented member of Congress. Sir, thank you so much for being with us. Before we get to the conversation about immigration, I want to get your reaction to the cloture vote in the Senate that puts Pete Hegseth on track to become the next defense secretary. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that enough has been said in the hearings to put seriously in question his ability to lead that important department. The questions came from experts in defense. And so not just his history of potentially bad behavior personally, but his ability to lead such a huge department and sophisticated and complicated department is in question and still remains in question. And of course, that puts into question whether in fact America will be secure.
Congressman, on the issue of immigration, there is now debate internally among Democrats about how to approach this issue that was seen as a liability in the last election. I know the Congressional Hispanic Caucus held this closed-door meeting yesterday. As the Laken Riley Act now heads to Trump's desk and Republicans prep additional legislation, is there a consensus among Democrats?
There is a consensus within the Congressional Hispanic Caucus to take on three major linchpins in the very broad immigration debate. As you know, immigration is not just about one issue. And those are dreamers, farm workers, and families. I think we all agree that dreamers, over 80% of the American people, agree that dreamers should be regularized and they should be part of our economy and our nation. Farm workers are essential to keep the cost of produce and products down. And farm workers are staying home because they're afraid they're going to be arrested and deported. And then families must be kept together because a family that's split, a mom that's split from his little girl or little boy, is a weak family, and that makes a weak nation. We agree that these are the 3 points. We're willing to have a discussion about border security, but these three are fundamental to our caucus.
I wonder specifically about New York City, because the NYPD commissioner reminded officers yesterday not to assist ICE in any civil immigration enforcement. The administration, as you know, is vowing to punish local officials who don't comply with mass deportation efforts. How much risk do you think these local officials are facing if they don't comply with ICE?
We'll see, but I know that any aggressive action, such as a mass deportation effort, gets messy, if not inhumane. And I don't think New York City or any city wants to be part of any practices that are messy or inhumane. And so law enforcement, federal law enforcement, is in charge of enforcing federal laws. I am glad that New York City and the New York City Police Department will be going after the bad guys on the street of New York City and not being a federal agency. I'm comfortable with that decision.
But if the supremacy clause in the Constitution essentially lays out that federal policy overrides local law, are there any protections legally that those officials might have?
Well, I tell you, there's been a very rough misinterpretation of what a sanctuary city is, in fact. It's not a city that harbors violent criminals. There are laws already in the books that will ensure that violent criminals are arrested, convicted, and deported. What a sanctuary city does, in fact, it allows a mom to take her daughter or son to school without the fear that the principal is going to call ICE on her. It allows a senior citizen to go into the emergency room without the fear that the nurse is going to call the authorities on her. It allows a mother or a woman that's a victim of domestic violence to be able to go to a precinct without the fear that the precinct commander will get her cuffed, arrested, and deported. That's what a sanctuary city is. It's a safety net that protects those that are vulnerable in our communities.
What is in place, Congressman, to stop funding from being offered to New York and other sanctuary cities, as the president is vowing he might do if they don't go along with mass deportation?
Well, I am an appropriator. I sit on the Appropriations Committee, and we will be going through all funding possibilities. And at that juncture, we will see what will be their efforts to cut any type of funding to any city. I think is a mistake. Cities deserve to have public safety. You cannot cut funding for public safety because of this, and allowed to have over 1,500 violent criminals, felons, released into our communities, as the president just did. It is just contradictory. And if the Republican Party is the party of law and order, this is a grave mistake.
Congressman, one final question. You are the first Dominican-American member of the U.S. House. I wonder what your reaction is to hearing that the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is making his first trip abroad to Latin America and specifically to the DR.
Well, Marco Rubio, I want to work with Marco Rubio. He's a friend of the Dominican Republic. He's been there before. We had great conversations with the Dominican president. I'm glad he chose the Dominican Republic as his first stop. The Dominican Republic is an ally of the United States, and I look forward working across the aisle with the new Secretary of State to make things better between both of our countries. Congressman
Adriano Espaillat, we have to leave the conversation there. Thank you so much for the time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Still ahead, wildfires